For much of 2020, millions of Americans have been in quarantine mode with limited time outside. Instead, many hours are spent indoors trying to wait out the storm. For some city dwellers, being forced to shelter in place these past several months has left them reflecting on current living arrangements. Is it worth it to pay sky-high rent for a small apartment in the middle of a concrete jungle? Or would it be better to have a larger space that's more connected to nature? These questions are all the more relevant today as millions of employees have stopped commuting into offices and are working from home temporarily or even permanently moving forward.
There's this whole epiphany going on. We're seeing the commercial landlords really starting to reevaluate their development because people don't really we're not offering a high quality of life when we pack people into these extremely high density buildings and cities. I'm not surprised at all to see so many people realizing that without their outdoor space in their day, they can't deal with these stresses.
That's Teresa Cody, an architect and author of the new book Rebuilding Earth, Designing Eco-Conscious Habitats for Humans. She's also the former president and founding partner of the Vancouver-based architecture firm B&H Bunting Cody. Through her work, she's seen how the capitalism model affects modern construction. In short, she says this translates to building for profit rather than demand.
The key driver is production and capital. So all we're doing is building more to make more money. And it's a false economy because we don't account for the cost of the goods and services that the earth provides us. We just put those in as a zero input. And we have currently overbuilt by 20%. So we now have 1.2 housing units for every family unit in China, North America, and Europe. So construction has become ludicrous. We don't need as much space as we're building. That is for sure.
Importantly, the materials used in this continuous cycle of construction are often new instead of recycled.
Probably the most damaging material that we use is aluminum. Aluminum has such a high embodied energy that 25% of the world's hydroelectric capacity is dedicated to the production of aluminum. When you look at a skyscraper, all those frames on the windows are aluminum. So we are not recycling the aluminum because there's a big business around new aluminum.
Construction, from the manufacturers of these materials to the real estate developers, is big business. Gross domestic product, or GDP, from construction in the U.S. increased to more than $655 billion in the first quarter of 2020, up from $653 billion in the fourth quarter of 2019, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. While these numbers signal growth and a country's wealth, Cody argues that they don't factor in the full picture.
There is something called the comprehensive wealth model, and instead of just valuing the two capitals that we seem to measure now, which are the financial, which is how much money you have, capital, the production, how much stuff you made this year as a country, production capital, we also need to look at this comprehensive wealth model and add to the financial and production capitals the human, social, and environmental capitals. Human capital is human health and well-being. Social capital is community resilience and well-being. And environmental capital is the health of the ecosystems that surround us. So if we really measure all of those, we get a much truer picture of the wealth of our country. So many countries sacrifice their environmental, human, and social capital in favor of their financial and production capitals. And those countries may have a high GDP, but they're not wealthy countries.
Some will debate that these human, social, and environmental markers are more important than the short-term gains of financial wealth. Construction will always be a vital pillar in the world economy, but it's possible to turn a profit while also incorporating eco-friendly materials and design practices that benefit the world. Cody points to Vancouver, her home, as a prime example of a city building in balance.
We are also starting to see an allowance for a community deciding to take lanes and roads out and plant them as community gardens, and the city is supporting that. We're also starting to see a move away from the skyscraper, which is an old model of building, towards what they call the missing middle. That's the 2, 3, 4-story housing, office, community, human scale development that people get the density that single family homes maybe don't give you, but the privacy in the garden space and the connection to each other that skyscrapers don't give you.
Paris is another city that has no skyscrapers, despite having an extreme population density. The French capital was developed in the 19th century and now has 2.1 million residents, with about 20,000 people per square kilometer in inner Paris. It's ranked as one of the most densely populated cities in the world, but is made up of primarily buildings with 6 floors or less.
There were some experiments done mostly in Asia where they looked at skyscraper on its side, and they found that the density was just about the same when you packed the city with 6 to 8-story buildings. You did not need as much space between the buildings, and more of the building was habitable. So that's why cities like Paris have very high density.
There are many misconceptions around the sustainability and efficiency of skyscrapers. On first look, a skyscraper can seem like the best option for housing. But how does it impact the world around it?
It has a higher energy use intensity because when you think about it, there's more energy required to get you up and down, to get the water up to you, to control the air pressure, more material required to construct your space because so much space is dedicated to equipment. The skyscraper is not a sustainable form in and of itself as a building. And then when you look at the land pattern, you can't place skyscrapers close together. You need to space them apart so that the ground isn't overshaded and so that you have light reaching the lower stories.
And the square grids that skyscrapers create throughout a city can also be isolating in some ways.
An island can be an island in the ocean, but it can also be a city block. Whenever we grid off land with roads, the land in the middle dies. And our cities are full of these gridded islands that are choking the life systems that want to connect and thrive.
In addition to designing cities to be more symbiotic with nature, another factor in balancing this equation is using natural building materials like glass, wood, and stone. Did you know that glass is made from sand?
Glass is an interesting product. A lot of people think that because of energy efficiency, we need to reduce the size of our windows. That's not quite true. Glass is very insulating. In fact, it's an insulator. When we coat it, we don't lose heat through it or gain heat through it, depending on the climate. Where we lose and gain the heat is through the frames. So we now have many structural glazing systems that don't have the thermal bridging through the frame. So that is allowing us to reshape our buildings using glass. So I see glass as a material of the future.
Cody says the program Environmental Product Declaration, which is used in Europe and Canada, places more responsibility on manufacturers by requiring consumers be provided with background information on materials.
An EPD is a declaration of the product's material sources, transportation energy, production energy, life cycle capacity. So how long will this material last in the building and what happens to it when it's done? And the manufacturer has to take responsibility for that end of life recycling or reusing or renewing. So it's a completely different concept. And of course, there's a burden on the manufacturers that they don't really want to take on. But it's like food labeling. Once you see a label on your food, you can decide, I don't want this much sugar. I don't want this much fat. This is a better food. Same thing with products. When you start to see a label that tells you how much embodied energy there is in there, what toxic materials there are, and what its lifespan is, you can make a better decision.
While there are many different viewpoints to the future of construction and sustainable design, It's important to learn from other countries and watch how they adopt new technologies. To learn more about this topic and our guest, Teresa Cody, visit viewpointsradio.org. You can also pre-order Cody's book, Rebuilding Earth, Designing Eco-Conscious Habitats for Humans, on Amazon.com or request a copy through your local bookstore. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price.
According to the FBI, one home burglary occurs every 26 seconds in the U.S., leaving many homeowners wondering how they can increase their safety and security. Experts recommend homeowners start by evaluating access points and strengthening door and window security. But many people still feel especially vulnerable to an intruder striking while they're at home and want to know how to protect themselves and their loved ones if this situation arises. One option for deterring home intruders is the Pepper Spray Launcher Home Defense Kit from Sabre, the leading pepper spray brand worldwide for more than 4 decades. Deploying projectiles filled with red pepper powder accurately from more than 60 feet away, the Sabre launcher effectively provides safety at a distance, which increases the opportunity to deter intruders and escape to safety. Designed for speed, accuracy, and distance, the Sabre launcher provides added peace of mind for homeowners. Find out more at SabreRed.com. That's SABRE Red.com.
What are you going to do with your old car? You can try selling it, you could junk it, or you can donate it to Heritage for the Blind. Your car will be towed away for free and your donation is tax deductible. Just call 1-800-835-1478. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats. It doesn't matter if your vehicle runs or not. It will be towed away for free, and you'll be supporting those that need help. Heritage for the Blind is a nonprofit organization that helps the visually impaired live fuller lives. Call right now to donate your car, and as a special thank you, you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call Heritage for the Blind right now. Call 1-800-835-1478. Donating is easy, and your vehicle is towed away for free. Plus, you'll get a free vacation voucher for donating. Call now, 1-800-835-1478. That's 1-800-835-1478.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up on Viewpoints.
If trauma doesn't come then, if that kind of injury to us doesn't come during young adulthood and midlife, it will definitely come if we're lucky enough to grow old.
Trauma, just another part of life. Then,
I found that with touch, my ability to feel you, see you, sense what's happening for you, if you carry tension or stress in certain areas in your bodies, I can interpret that.
The benefits of being cuddled. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.